Hey everyone, I'm Jack Watson, full-time UI UX designer, illustrator, animator, donut connoisseur, and most of all, your host for this Illustrator illustration challenge. Today we'll be working on a menu design in a chalkboard style using custom brushes and textures. Before we get started, right below me in the description under this video, you'll find all the links to other challenges, the Discord communities, and a link to download your resources to create along with us. Once you open your Illustrator file, you will see one artboard and some resources over here to get started. I've got a radial gradient here with a grain effect applied to it, just to kind of give you something to work with. We're going to be working on a chalkboard, so I wanted to make something that looked like a chalkboard. If you're starting with your own file, though, you can feel free to just create a rectangle with a dark fill color. That'll work just fine, so our lighter chalk stands out. So you don't have to create your own brushes today. There are some texture brushes already in Illustrator. I can go up here to my brush panel and I can drop this down. I can also go up to Window, Brushes here to open up the brush panel in a separate window. I'll drag it open a little bit more, pull it out so we can see it. And you can use this, it's called the charcoal pencil here. This is fine if you want to just use that. We can open up the hamburger menu here on the side and go down to open brush libraries. And there's a whole bunch of actually brushes built into Illustrator if you wanted to just use those. But I'll just close this. I do want to go over how you can create your own brushes. So I'm going to switch over to my overhead cam. Ta-da! So I've got a piece of paper here, a piece of white textured paper, and I've got a piece of charcoal, and you can see I've kind of like created some examples already, but the idea today is that we want to create something that we can see all of this lovely, let me bring it closer to the camera, all this lovely texture in there. So that's going to transfer to our brush when we make it in Illustrator. You can do a bunch of different, I've got some ideas over here if you wanted to explore different shapes or just do some lines. We're going to just do some simple lines, thinking about where you start and end the brush is how it's going to kind of follow your path in Illustrator. So I can draw out using just like the flat, wider end of my charcoal here. Let's go this way. I can draw a really wide line. Ooh, that one's got like striations in it. We could draw out a really thin line by turning it over to the side. We could do a really thin line if we wanted to have a kind of like this top one here would be if we wanted to do like a line for a stroke or a path, because that's really thin. We could use these heavier ones for some fills on our chalkboard sign if we wanted to add some fills. These would be nice fill brushes. So if you don't have a piece of like fancy paper and you don't have fancy charcoal, you can just use a regular piece of paper and like a pencil or something, and you can do what's called a rubbing, where you take that piece of paper and you put it over something textured and you just kind of draw over top with a pencil. The idea is that you just want to pick up lots and lots of texture. We want this like contrasty spots of light and dark in our brush. So for the next part, we could use Adobe Capture for this on a phone or a tablet, but to keep everything in Illustrator today, we can simply take a photo on your phone's camera and use that. There's a few ways to get your photo into Illustrator, and first of all, getting it off of your phone on your computer. If you're really struggling, and it depends on your phone, but if you're really struggling, you can always kind of like email it to yourself. Almost every phone should be able to do that. And once you've got it, you can download it to your desktop, and I can just go over, and I've got my photo that I'm going to use on my desktop, and I'm just going to drag it into Illustrator. When I drag it over top of Illustrator here, I'm just going to release once I see it in the window, and it's going to drop that in there. So our photo is massive. We don't need it that large. I'm going to move some of the stuff out of my way so I can work. There we go. I'm going to zoom out so we can see more of what we're looking at using the magnifying glass tool here. And I want to just scale this down, first of all. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to choose the selection tool, and I'm going to grab the corner, and I'm going to hold down Shift so that it constrains the shapes. I don't want to like have my photo be weirdly stretched. I'm going to zoom in. If you don't hold down Shift, what's going to happen when you scale it is it's going to do all kinds of weird stuff, which maybe you want, but I just want to hit Command Z to undo. Leave it just kind of straightforward today. And I'm going to make this pretty small. I'm going to use this photo today to make the shapes that are going to create my brush. I'm going to take it from this photo, which is a raster format, and I'm going to turn it into vector shapes. So however I, kind of want the size of my brush here is the size I'm going to get close to scaling it down. If you wanted to check that, I'm just going to click on the line tool over here. I'm going to draw a line out. By default, Illustrator makes a 1-point line. So if I deselect my line, clicking off with the selection tool, you can kind of get a comparison to how large your brush is going to be. So I want it to be pretty small, but I am going to zoom in so we can see what we're doing, right? So I'm going to delete that line by selecting it and hitting delete, go to my magnifying glass and zoom in. So we can't really work with this right now as it is because we won't be able to get like a brush out of it, right? We need to use vector shapes since we're in Illustrator. So I'm going to go up here and at the top here I've got image trace. I could click on that and it would start doing the image trace for me. But I'm going to go down to this little drop down, and it's this little arrow next to it. Let me zoom in so you can kind of see at the top. And I am going to pick the black and white logo preset. I only want to work with black and white because I just want this to be one color for the brush. I only want to end up getting black shapes for this, so I'm going to hit that. It might give you this warning. This is just telling you that my photo is enormous, so as a result, it's going to take a minute or two to actually run through the process. That's okay. It's not going to cause any problems. It's not really an error or anything. It's just kind of a warning, so we can hit OK. And it's going to do its thing. All right, so this is looking pretty good, but if we wanted to refine this a bit, and we do, because it's a very important setting that we need to check, you can go back up here to this image trace panel icon at the top. It's right next to your, where your options were for the image trace in the top bar. I'm going to pop that open. And I'm going to move it over here so you guys can see it. And these are the basic options that come with the image trace. Pulling this up is going to add more details. However, there's a caveat here. You can see that it's filling my screen with black. What's happening is that more of that shadow from my camera is coming in and it's creeping over my brush. We don't want to do that because if we keep it like this, it's going to bring all of this area here that's black into our image or into our brush, into the final shapes that we make, and we don't want that. So we want to drag this threshold down until we get rid of all of that stuff, and we just want to end up with the shape that we want to use for our brush here, these two here. There's a couple of other options that we can take a look at down here in advanced. So I'm going to pop this open by just clicking on the arrow. And we don't really need to worry about these. You can adjust paths low and bring corners down less. You can adjust these settings to decrease the number of points so that you don't have as much, it's not as heavy on your computer if you wanted to. So we can bring down the number of paths and we'll just kind of make it a little bit lighter. It's still going to be pretty heavy. But there's something in here that you have to be absolutely positive that you check. It's super important, and that is this ignore white down here. We must check this box. It's in the advanced tab here. When I do that, it's going to do some more thinking. It's going to get rid of my white background. That's really important because when we go to use this, if we keep that white background in, it's going to be difficult to actually select our shapes. So once your file kind of looks like this and you're like, huh, you think this looks pretty good, we're going to go up here and we're going to hit expand. And what expand is going to do is it's going to break our image, our raster image, out into vector shapes that we can work with. So after we've expanded, we're going to get a selection area that looks like this. We can see that this is now selected. And currently it kind of does that in a group. So I've got both of these in a single photo. So if I deselect and I reselect, you can see that this is a group indicated by these red arrows that are showing where our selection is. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go to Object, Ungroup. That way I can select each of these individually just by dragging with my selection tool like so, because I only want to use one of them at a time for my brush. So we're going to keep it pretty simple today with our brush settings. I'm just going to grab by clicking and dragging with the selection tool, this bottom one. I'm going to go up to, you can either go up to the brush drop down up here and click new brush, or you can go to it in that brush panel that we had open under window, gotta deselect, window, brushes, and you can click on the same plus icon down here, Click and drag. I'm going to hit plus. It's going to ask me what type of brush that I want to make. For today, I want to make an art brush. These other options are just different ways of making brushes. We just want to use this path, these shapes here, as an art brush. So I'm going to hit this. I'm going to hit OK. And then once we open up this window, we don't need to worry about too many of these options today. There's two options in particular that we need to focus on, though. The first one is this direction here. Now I can see, just by kind of zooming in, that the arrow is following the same way that I drew that line. So I drew it from left to right. That's the direction that I want it to follow. If you bring this in and your that arrow is not following the same direction as your brush stroke, you want to change that so that they're the same. Finally, the last important thing from here is we want to change our colorization method to hue shift. If you've ever worked with brushes before and you've tried to draw with them after the fact and the color isn't changing when you change the color of your stroke, it's probably because you need to change your colorization method here. If you ever are confused, you can click on this little light bulb down here and it will give you this little hint to kind of show you what the different options do. Hue shift is going to change the color, the hue of our brush. So if we change hue shift, if we change our colorization mode to hue shift, it's going to let us change the color of our brush with our stroke color. And that's it. We'll just hit OK. I'm going to zoom back out so we can see our full artboard here. And if we wanted to test this out, I'm just going to close these windows so they're out of our way. I can just go here and I can draw a line with the line tool. Can't see anything yet because we've got no settings down here. I'll open up my panels and I will put a white stroke on this line just by clicking on that in the swatches panel, the white swatch, and I will switch to our brush. And just like that, we've got our brush and we can see what it looks like. We can test it out, see how it looks. And I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to just kind of delete that for now. Now let's get into making our menu. I want to make a menu board sign. It could be on like the inside of a restaurant on the wall, or it could be like a sandwich board sign on the sidewalk. You can pick whatever kind of theme you want to make for today. I also want to ask how everybody's doing in the live chat today. What are you all working on? If you're over here at behance.net/Adobe Live, you can hang out with the community and chat live with us every day at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Somebody in our live chat is talking about how image trace is amazing for scanned printed materials for digital use. Yeah, it's got a whole bunch of different uses. So I'm going to pick a font. I'm going to type some text. I'm going to grab the type tool here. And I'm going to type out, I'm going to make this larger so you can see it. So I'm going to go over to the font size here and bring it up to 72. And then I'll just type open. We want to let people know that our restaurant is open. And then I will put the hours on our sign. Let them know this is like a sandwich sign outside. I'm going to put 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. late hours. And then for today, for the technique that we're going to be doing, I want my text to be really heavy so that we got space in between our characters or our letters to add some fills. So I have already pulled a font that I want to use, Campaign. It's an Adobe font if you want to use it yourself. You can find all kinds of fonts, all of the fonts, at fonts.adobe.com if you need help picking a font. I'll drag this onto my artboard, and then we can't see it, so we need to switch it to a white fill by clicking on the white in our fill. And we'll drag the corner here, and holding down Shift to constrain it, I'll scale this up a little bit. And this is not exactly what we want. We want to add some texture. And we also want to add some, to give this a little bit more of a hand-drawn feel. So first, I'm going to click on my open text, and I'm going to go up here to my envelope distort. These are like warp options you can apply to your text. And you can pick different options here. You can make, if this would be nice for like a brunch menu, this arc upper. There's all kinds of different styles you can play with. I'm going to pick rise. You can adjust the like how much it bends. Either bending it in the negative will take it down, bringing it back up into the positive. It's going to rise up over the top of our text here. I'll hit OK. I feel like that looks pretty good. Dragging the corner here with Shift and the selection tool, I'll scale that up a little bit. And now I'm just kind of playing with this placement here. I want to maybe scale this text down. We'll change this to, instead of black under my styles, I will pick maybe like a medium. This fits nicely into kind of the space down here. Okay, I think this looks good. So now I've got all of this text selected still with my selection tool. You can drag to just kind of make sure it's all selected. I'm going to go up to Object, and I'm going to pick Expand. And this is going to expand my distort and my text and all of my text into objects. So these are filled objects. It's super important for what we're doing today to use filled objects. Brushes will not, they will not work with like text, like live text, editable text. So we want to expand these into editable shapes. So now that we've got this, I'm going to make a copy of this because I want to have two copies. I want to have one copy for my outlines, and I want to have one copy for my fills. So I'm going to hit Command C and Command F, and then down here in my Layers panel, I'm going to poke out the eye on the top two copies that I made, the ones in front, to hide those, because I don't actually need those for the time being. And then I'm going to drag to select the ones that are currently on my artboard. And now we can go over here to our fill and stroke, and we can swap it so that we've got outlines on our letters instead of fills. And we can go up to our brush panel at the top, and we can pick our brush. Now it's looking a little crazy. It's looking a little hectic. You can see we've got these weird spikes here on our letters. If you get that, and that's what that's happening to your file, you can go over here and you can fix it by going to Stroke and picking one of these other corner options. If you wanted to keep them square, you could pick that bevel joint. You can make them round and smooth. So I'm going to click on that bevel joint, and now it's going to get rid of those weird spikes. But it's also still a little bit of a heavy line, right? It's a little bit hard to see. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click on that drop down for stroke, and I'm going to pick a smaller stroke size just to make it a little bit easier to read. Let's zoom back out, and now we've got our outlines. I'm gonna poke the eye again to show our original groups for the copies that we made before. So now we've got our fills back. I'm going to just select this, and I'm going to hold down Shift and select our second one. So now I've got both of my selections, my fills selected here for my text. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to use a little trick to add some like scribbly fills to our text here. I'm going to go up to Effect, and I'm going to drop down to Stylize, and I'm going to pick Scribble. And it's not going to look like anything really has happened first. It's gonna pull up this menu here, and the settings are kind of set to default. But if we click on this drop down, we can go through and select these different options here for adding some scribbly scribbles to our text. And I would say for what we're doing today, avoid using ones that are really densely packed, because you're not going to be able to see that texture as well as you can with the looser ones. So I'm actually going to go up here and I'm actually going to pick loose. You can also go in and adjust all these crazy settings if you want to add to customize this as much as you want. But the other thing we can look at here is the angle. So if I drag this angle around, it's going to change whether or not my text, you can see that it's kind of following this upper left to bottom right angle, or we can go and we can switch it to be going the other way. So it's just a really quick way to add some scribbles to our text to create these fills. I'm going to hit OK. And this is looking pretty cool. It's got like a little bit of texture. It's got that feel that it's been like filled with like a hand drawn. But I want to add my brush to those. I want to make this like custom. So I'm going to go up here. And the first time that we did this, we used Expand, and that expanded our objects into like filled shapes. This time I'm going to go up here and I'm going to use Object Expand Appearance. And the reason I'm going to do that is that we've got a effect applied to this, and effects show up in our Appearance panel down here. So in order to expand those effects, we have to expand our appearance. And that's going to give us all of these lines to work with, and what we can do with lines, we can go up here and we can apply a brush to them. So I'm going to pick my art brush here, and again, it's going to look really crazy because it's too heavy of a stroke. So I'm going to go up here to my stroke, and I'm going to click to drop down, and I'm going to pick a smaller stroke size, maybe something like 0.25 this time. And then I'll zoom out, and that's looking pretty good. If I deselect here, you can see that it's filling our shapes. We could do one more thing by selecting our fill, holding down Shift, selecting our fill. we can reduce the opacity of this to give it a little bit of a more natural, soft feel. I'm going to go up here to opacity, and I'm just going to pull this down a little bit. And that's going to make it look like our fills aren't as like strong as our outlines. So we've got some text for the top here. I'm just going to drag to select and move this up a little bit. Now let's add a menu. Let's add like maybe some specials on our chalkboard sign here. Like maybe there's a couple of items on here. Stony is asking, where was the scribble option? It is up here under Effects, Stylize, and it's the very last option, Scribble. So I'm going to grab my type tool. I'm going to click. It's going to make some text. I'm going to change it to white so we can see it. I'm going to type out, maybe this is a coffee shop, so I'm going to go with like espresso, latte, flat, white, Americano, something like that. All right, and everything on our menu so far is looking very centered. So I think I'm going to change my paragraph alignment to align center to kind of match with the way that our sign looks right now. And then I want to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to grab the corner with the selection tool, and I'm just going to make these a little bit larger. Maybe I'll make my text up here a little bit larger by dragging to select, and we'll just scale everything up so that it fills more of the space up here. Holding down Shift so that we constrain it. Okay, so now we've got our menu items. I think I want to make these a little bit lighter of a font because this is feeling a bit strong and I want this to be the focus. So we're going to add a little bit of hierarchy by dropping our font styles and switching to light. Now we can go up here and we need to remember we need to go up to Object, Expand, and we need to use shapes for our brush. So I'm going to expand these and it's going to make shapes. And this time I can just go to swap the fill and stroke and apply our brush. There we go. Again, this is a little bit heavy, so I might go with something like 0.5 to make it a little bit lighter so it doesn't feel so intense. But also, we don't need to add any fills to this. So because we used a thinner font now, this is fine. We don't need to go in and we don't need to add any fills. We just use that technique up here on these letters because they have a lot of space in them and it kind of is nice to add that like brush or that scribbly chalk feel. You can also use this technique on shapes and on illustrations. So if I grab the rectangle tool and I just draw out a rectangle here, and I will click on the pen tool, and I've got Smart Guides on under View, Smart Guides. So when I'm aligned with that center and my cursor changes to the plus, I'll just click to add a point. I'll grab my direct selection tool and drag it out a little bit. So now we've got like a little arrow. I can switch the fill and stroke. I'm going to do the same thing using Command C and Command F to copy and paste my shape. I'm going to hide that top one for the time being, switch it to a stroke, and apply my brush. We'll drop it down to 0.5. We will show, by poking the eye again, our fill, select our fill, and this is interesting. You can go up here to Effect, and we could apply a new scribble by going under Stylize Scribble, but I can just apply the same effect again by clicking on this top one here. It's going to keep the same settings that I had before, so when I click on that, it's going to do the exact same thing. It'll have the same angle, the same options chose. It's a really handy way to keep everything kind of consistent. So then I can go to Object, Expand Appearance, apply our brush, change it to a smaller weight, and drop the opacity down. So now we've got a really cool sign, and we're ready to share this with everybody in the community. I'm going to go up and go to File, Export, Export for Screens. I'm going to pick a location where I want to save this to. Hit OK, my desktop's fine, export. And once you're ready, you can pop over into our Discord. Our Discord link is in the description below this video. Everybody in here is sharing their work. Dinas, our mod here, is helping out, our mentor is helping everybody out, giving suggestions. Katarina was doing the branding challenge, or the logo challenge. But you can hop in here and share your work just by dragging into the Discord window in our challenge channel under feedback, and then I'll just hit enter, and it will post it here so everybody can provide me feedback. But That's going to be it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this Illustrator illustration challenge. We worked on creating custom brushes using the scribble effect to create texture in our Chalkboard menu sign. We are live every day at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time here at behance.net/Adobe Live, and stay tuned on Behance for more live content. Bye everyone!